Yo, 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 what's that word? This is 32 Any Podcast, episode 19. Before we begin, I'd like to say congratulations to, in my opinion, the greatest of all time, LeBron James, on becoming the NBA's all-time leading scorer. That's to get the first thing out of the way. Second out of the way, I know y'all be hearing the smoke alarm going off. By the next time, episode 20, make sure y'all check in for that. It won't be there anymore. That's a promise to y'all. Please visit Hattie's collection. Now, episode 19, we're going to get into a little bit of talk about the Super Bowl, give y'all some analysis on it, and we're going to end off with my Super Bowl winner to win that game. And I already know I had to renege on the fact that I picked the Buffalo Bills to win. I know they didn't make it. They lost tragically against the Cincinnati Bengals, and it didn't work out. But, you know, they put up a good run. They had a good season. They're going to do a couple things in the offseason, get back on track. So we're going to talk about the Super Bowl, and I'm going to talk about my 4 favorite trades from the NBA trade deadline. Of course, I'm going to talk about the big ones involving Kevin Durant, Kyrie, and the Lakers. But without further ado, we're about to knock it out of the park. Let's get right into it. So first, the way we're going to talk about the Super Bowl is through each team. So first, I'm going to start off with the Cheifs and their 4 best offseason or just additions to the team this year. For me, I'm going to start off with first-round rookie cornerback Trent McDuffie. So, per Pro Football Focus, he had a coverage grade that ranked 14th. Yards allowed per coverage snapped, he ranked 3rd. Yards per target, he ranked 9th. And the primary target percentage, he ranked 10th. This defense totally changed when he was into the game. He was out until week 9 last year, or this season, and he became the number 1 cornerback upon his arrival to the team. He had a similar impact to Sauce Gardner and Tariq Woolen for the Seattle Seahawks. Very impressive rookie corner, and he fit in perfectly with the press man scheme that the Chiefs defensive coordinator liked to run. Now, for their second offseason addition, it was another rookie first-round pick, and that was George Karlaftis. I hope I'm saying that right. He had 49 total pressures, which was second among rookie edge rushers this year, again per PFF. Very impressive. He had all the measurables coming out. I think when he came out, he was looked at to be more of a run defender. But when you have guys like Frank Clark and Chris Jones on the defensive line, you're going to face a lot of one-on-ones. You're not going to be double-teamed as much, and I think that allowed him to flourish in his game. Plus, they have great defensive line coaches for the Chiefs, and they added a lot to his toolbox, whether that be the spin move, and he already had powerful hands. Next, we had wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster. I think that's the first time I've ever said that name right. This year, he had 78 catches for 933 yards and just 3 total touchdowns. But, you know, Juju is always good. He's never been a burner, but he's always good to be a good possession receiver. He makes sure he catches the ball, especially when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes putting it on the money for you. He was very efficient in the catches that he had. And it was a big bounce back year from his time in Pittsburgh. Finally, it was the midseason trade for Kadarius Toney from the New York Giants for a 3rd-round pick and I believe a 6th-round pick. His numbers don't wow you. He ended up with only 16 receptions, but he was targeted 19 times. So a very high completion percentage when he was targeted. And that's even bumped up in the playoffs. He ended up with 2 touchdowns, I believe 1 receiving and 1 rushing. He had 82 rushing yards with a 85.1 overall PFF grade. Sorry, 75.4, I apologize. But another thing, again, he's highly efficient. He knows what to do in this offense. He was that Andy Reid player that he needed that can do everything, be comfortable in his role, but also allow that creative mind of Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid to be efficient and creative in what they wanted to do with him. Now, 3 key offensive stats for the Chiefs. They were the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL this year. They ranked 70.4 .51 red zone touchdown percentage. So that's very important, especially in a Super Bowl game where you're going against a ferocious defense like the Eagles to score touchdowns. I don't think they can win this game scoring field goals or even trading field goals. They need to score touchdowns because we know that the Eagles want to run the ball, slow down the game, and make sure they're very efficient and with minimal turnovers as possible. That's also been a problem for the Chiefs offense as far as turnovers, and we saw that against the Jacksonville Jaguars come up, and we know that the Eagles are a totally different animal from the Jaguars, even though, you know, my Jags had a respectable season. So the second key offensive stat was 48% conversion rate on thirds down. They converted almost 50% of their third downs. That's very important in this game. They're going to need to keep the ball. They're going to need to score points, again, against this very tough Philadelphia defense. They're going to need to be very aware of what they're doing. The Chiefs are one of the most penalized teams in the league down there with the Jets, and I believe the Dolphins. They're going to need to be very clean, execute on third down, keep their high-powered offense on the field, allow Travis Kelce, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Juju Smith-Schuster to work, and of course the aforementioned Kadarius Toney. Now finally, the third key offensive stat was Patrick Mahomes was only sacked 29 times, which ranked 17th in the NFL. Other quarterbacks were ranked over 50 times. The Chiefs were also one of the key offenses as far as getting the ball out quickly. I believe they got it out around 0.3 of a second. So he was very efficient with the ball. He knew what he was doing. Obviously, he's been in this offense for a long time. They picked up some very shifty, speedy receivers who are strong at the line of scrimmage to get open very quickly. And regardless of that, they could hand it off to the running back. They just made sure they were moving at a quick, efficient pace. And again, very key to really know what they're doing in that offense. Now, three key defensive stats. They ranked 6th overall in pass breakups. Didn't have many interceptions. I believe both L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie were top 25 cornerbacks per PFF. So they have a good collection of cornerbacks, solid safety group, but they could be better in this area as far as getting takeaways. But regardless of the fact, they're going to need to be tough on Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown in this game. And we'll see how they do against somebody like Kenneth Gainwell, who I'm going to talk about a little bit later. A second key defensive stat was their 2nd overall in sacks. We're going to get to the 1st overall later on again. But they were 2nd overall in sacks. Again, Chris Jones, Frank Clark, and George Khalifa, the rookie, and Derek Nandi clogging up that middle and absorbing those double teams so those guys can have more one-on-one opportunities. So again, they were great at getting after the passer, and they're going to have to get after the passer in this game if they have a hope of winning. They were 8th in rushing yards allowed per game. Now, a lot of this can be contributed to them scoring so many points that the other offenses had to abandon the pass. They had to abandon the run so they can catch up with the pass. So saying that, they weren't great when the game was close and the other team could operate how it wanted to operate as far as running the ball, which is obviously, if this game is close, then that could show up and be a problem in this game. Now, X Factor. The X Factor in this game, not really much of an X Factor because he's a superstar player. The best tight end in the game, Travis Kelce. This year he had 110 catches for 1,338 yards and 12 touchdowns. Averaged about 12 yards per completion. So he was very solid this year. Not even very solid, spectacular as he always is. Obviously, he has a Hall of Fame career already. This will be another notch in their book if they're able to win. And we'll see how it goes. But without further ado, we're going to turn the page to the Philadelphia Eagles. So Philly, their 4 key offseason additions. First, I want to start off with A.J. Brown. A.J. had 88 catches for 1,496 yards, 11 touchdowns, and to me, most importantly, he averaged 17 yards per completion. So even though The Eagles didn't lean on the pass very heavy this year. When they did, they can always count on a big play, almost 2 touchdown worthy through the air passing yards or completions from A.J. Brown himself. Great possession receivers with the Titans. And obviously, that trade looks even better as they gave him that big contract. The Titans end up replacing him with Treylon Burks. We have to see how he plays out, but he's been a number one receiver for a long time in this league, and he freed up a lot of things for Devontae Smith this year and aforementioned players like Kenneth Gainwell. And we'll see how he does in this game as he faces some solid cornerbacks for the Kansas City Chiefs. The number 2 addition was Hassan Reddick. He ended up with 16 sacks, which was second in the NFL. He had 6 forced fumbles, which led the NFL. And he was ranked 81 overall by PFF. That's very important because he was very efficient in all his snaps. He played the majority of the snaps. But the Eagles have such a deep and talented defensive line. When I went to go look up these stats, honestly, I couldn't believe some of the names that they had coming off the bench. Names like Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, Fletcher Cox, and other people who we're going to get to a little bit later. The third key offseason addition was Kazir White. He ended up with 110 total tackles. Solid linebacker coming over from the Chargers. Started every game for the Eagles as well as the Chargers in the past 2 years. Questionable in coverage, even though he was a college safety, which is a little tricky, but the point of the matter is when he got to the ball, he made sure to bring the ball carrier down, and that's always important, and it's going to be of much importance in this game when you're lined up against players like the speedy Kadarius Toney. The fourth key addition, I couldn't believe the Giants let this guy go, just released him. I get it was a cap casualty, but, you know, these are one of the players when they hit the market, all the good teams and the contenders want these types of players, cornerbacks. And that was James Bradberry. He ended up with 40 total tackles, which is really solid for a corner, 17 passes defended, and 3 interceptions. So the key part about that is he making plays on the ball, which is always important for a cornerback. It's always important. You know, you have your Deions, which was solid all over, but Deion always made sure he made a play on the ball, is what he's most famous for. And I'm not comparing those two, but I'm just saying the skill of being a ball hawk is always incredibly important, especially in this game because the Chiefs had a little bit of, again, turnover problems throughout the season, and we're going to see how that goes. I'm sure they're not going to want to test a cornerback like Darius Slay. Avonte Maddox is also a solid cornerback, and I believe they're getting C.J. Gardner-Johnson off of the injury list. And as we know, the Eagles have the number 1 pass defense, so it's going to be very important that Patrick Mahomes takes care of the ball in this game. They can't have many turnovers because they know the Eagles are going to rush the ball, play ball control offense, and, you know, it's going to get crucial in that fourth quarter. So they probably want to jump out to as big a lead as they possibly can, as speaking on the Chiefs, but we'll see how that goes because the Eagles take care of the ball. They control the rock. So 3 key defensive stats. The Eagles last year in 2021, they had a lowly 29 sacks. This year, they had the biggest year-over-year improvement. They went from 29 sacks in 2021 to 70 and led the league in 2022. Second key stat, which is balancing off of the first. They had 4 players who had over 10 sacks. They were led by Hassan Reddick with 16, Brandon Graham, excellent long-term Eagles linebacker with 11, Josh Sweat, Gold Nose, defensive end with 11, and also Javon Hargrave, defensive lineman with 11 sacks. They also had one more player, Fletcher Cox, who had 7 sacks, defensive tackle. And they had the Chicago Bears single-season sack record leader, Robert Quinn, traded to them for a 4th-round pick mid-season, who's still getting his feet wet with the team, but he's a veteran. We'll see how he comes to play in this game. I'm sure he's going to show up. They just have a really ferocious pass rush along with a great defensive backfield. I wouldn't really call it a weakness, but the least effective part of this defense is the linebacking core. They're going to have their hands full, but again, this is a really solid defensive line and defensive overall. The number 3 key defensive stat is in the last 8 weeks of the regular season, the Eagles' rush defense ranked 15th. They had key additions like, again, Linval Joseph, and Ndamukong Suh. They were more committed to stopping the run. Jalen Hurts had a little bit of injury issues right there in that last little part of the season. He had to get healthy. That's when Gardner Minshew was in there. So they were doing things a little bit different, but they decided to free up a weakness that they had, and they did a good job putting 2 veteran defensive tackles in there who have probably lost a step as far as being pass rushers, but are still great run defenders with that experience to know what offenses are trying to do. All right. 3 key offensive stats. First of all, best offensive line in the league, just strictly dominant. Per Pro Football Focus, they had 4 of the 5 top 10 players at their positions, with the only one not being there was a recent, I believe, top 3-round pick in Landon Dickerson. Second key defensive stat. Both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner from a couple years back at Alabama, each had over 1,000 yards, and they combined for 18 touchdowns. So despite the Eagles have the #1 rushing offense, both of their receivers were still highly productive. They made sure to get players like Kenneth Gainwell and their running backs involved in the pass game. They were great at play action. So they're going to be dangerous from both sides, through the air and running the ball. You got to think that the Chiefs are planning to, in some way, limit that running game. They're going to load the box with Willie Gay, linebackers like that, and they're going to force them to try to pass the ball. They're going to try to make Jalen Hurts play quarterback more, which he's done a great job at, but that's what they're going to force him to try to do. That's what they're going to force the Eagles to try to do, and we're going to see how that plays out. But again, they got 2 great receivers. We'll see how it goes. The #3 key offensive stat is that the #1 rushing offense. Both Miles Sanders and Jalen Hurts each had over 750 yards, with Miles Sanders, I believe, having over 1,200 yards. For me, the X Factor, I've mentioned his name a few times, and that was former Memphis running back Kenneth Gainwell. Now, I mentioned Memphis because I watched them a lot. I'm a Florida State fan, a fan of Mike Norvell. So I went back and watched their offense. He was always the most explosive player on the field. Has a smaller stature. This year, he had 240 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns and about 170 receiving yards out of the backfield. But he just really came alive in the playoff. And I think he's going to be a big factor in this game as far as getting out in the passing windows, to not allow those linebackers to be cheating up in the box to try to stop the run. Now, we'll see how that plays out, because that's almost to pick your poison. Me personally, and I think the Chiefs are thinking this way, they're going to try to stop Miles Sanders and Jalen Hurts, as much as they can. And, if you can live with Kenneth Gainwell going off, then maybe that's the sin that you pick. But at the same time, he's really showed up in the playoffs. We saw that against the 49ers, and I think he's going to have a big game. Now, without further ado, I'm going to make my Super Bowl pick. And before I looked up all these stats, I thought it was going to be a close game. I thought there was a chance for the Chiefs to really go off. But after diving deeper into the stats, the names on the rosters, the resumes, and how these teams have come together towards the end of the season, I'm going to have to go with the Eagles. I'm not going to say they're going to win in a landslide, but I honestly think they could win by over 10 plus. If I had to give a score prediction, forgive me, this is my first time thinking of a score. I'm going to have to say 34 to 24. I'm going to rock with that. I'm going to say 34 to 24. By the way, guys, please check out Hattie's Collection. Check out my other episodes of 32 Inning Podcast. Now, finally, I'm going to talk to y'all about the NBA trade deadline a little bit, and about my 4 favorite trades from that. We're going to go to the phone for this one. So I really like this trade. I think it was an underrated trade, and it was between Detroit, Atlanta, Golden State, and Portland. I know this trade can be nixed as of today due to the fact that Gary Payton II was found to have a core muscle issue that can keep him out for a couple months. I know he's happy to be back in the Warriors uniform. But there have been some strange reports coming out that the Portland Trailblazers were not forcing him, but giving him toilet roll shots in order for him to play through the pain. For some reason, they then make that known in a trade situation. I'm not going to comment on that as far as good for business, bad for business like other people were, but it is a little questionable. So in saying that, Detroit got James Wiseman, former number 2 overall pick, between LaMelo and Anthony Edwards. I think it's a solid upside play for his for his potential. He has great physical tools, lefty. Showed in high school, some little bit in college, that he can shoot the 3-ball a little bit. He should be a more dominant rebounder. He just seems like a really raw player, but again, he had the talent to be the number 2 overall pick. And per reports, he was actually number 2 on the Detroit Pistons draft. Number 1 on the Detroit Pistons draft board at the time of the aforementioned draft. Atlanta picking up Saddiq Bey. Nice shooter, has decent size, probably above average size for the position. Not much of a defensive player, not much on length, but I think he'd be a solid addition to their rotation. Although, Atlanta, why we still got John Collins on the roster? He's in the trade discussions every year. It's not cruel because these guys are being paid handsomely, but I don't understand it at this point, but I get it if you guys are trying to get that fair value back. And he has been a solid veteran contributor to playoff teams and going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe they're trying to rekindle that magic going back here, but we're going to see how it plays out. Golden State, again, they're picking up Gary Payton II, solid defensive player. He's going to be out for an extended period of time if the Warriors don't nick the trade by this Sunday's deadline. I think he was a solid addition, knows how to gel with the team, and was a great defensive presence when he got on the floor last year in the playoffs. Portland Trailblazers, 5 future second-round picks and Kevin Knox. I think those second-round picks are the most important part of their additions because that allows them to make other minor moves coming up in their summertime. And, they have a good scouting department, so we're going to see how that plays out. For the most part, I don't think Kevin Knox is going to play that much, but he's a switchable wing player between the 3 and 4. Still young at 23. We'll see if he can get some minutes in the rotation. Obviously, he wasn't playing for the Pistons. And we'll see how it works out for him. But I think the future second-round picks were the most important part about their additions. Now, for my second favorite trade. So I want to scroll down to it. It was actually... For me, it was the Kyrie Irving trade. Let me get to it so I can go through all of the things that got switched and went back and forth. For Dallas, they picked up Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris. Obviously, that was very important that Kyrie got out of there. He didn't seem happy there, and obviously, it's come out lately that it's surrounding the contract. I'll never fault a guy for feeling some type of way about his money. But, Kyrie didn't want to be there anymore. And he made that very clear. You guys should check out his post-game press conference after his second game in Dallas and see some of the comments he made about Kevin Durant requesting the trade and ultimately, not requesting the trade, but getting traded and how he felt about that. But in his first 2 games, Kyrie has really shown up. I think Dallas had the most points of any NBA team at the half. In Kyrie's second game, in the first one, I think he dropped 24 points. Couple rebounds and a couple assists, and he looked generally happy. Happy than I've seen Kyrie on the court in a while. Seems like he has total buy-in. I know he feels good being coached by a veteran point guard, somebody you respect than Jason Kidd, and we're going to see how it plays out. Kyrie's going to be a free agent this summer. Of course, the Mavericks traded for him with the expectation that they can give him new contracts, but per reports, no promises were made. We'll see how he plays out with Luka. Those are 2 ball-dominant players, but obviously Kyrie has a history of playing with ball-dominant players like Kevin Durant and LeBron James and achieving the highest level of success as far as being a champion for the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers. Markieff Morris, switchable wing/big player, forward. We'll see if he gets many minutes, but he's a veteran piece, and he can provide tough defense in the playoffs. and physicality. For Brooklyn, they got back Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a 2029 first-round pick, a middle schooler, and 2 second-round picks coming in 2027 and 2029. Dorian Finney-Smith was the Mavericks' best defender. We're going to see how that plays out in Brooklyn. I think he's still going to be a solid player. Spencer Dinwiddie was a solid secondary shot creator. He was doing his best to replace the guard that went to the Knicks from the Mavericks. Forgive me if I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. A really good, solid player. I think his first name is Jalen. But he's a really solid player. He's doing his best, and I think he's going to do the same thing for Brooklyn, closing out this last half of the season. We'll see how it plays out. Obviously, these guys are auditioning to see if they're going to be a part of the future of the Nets with a trade that we're going to talk about as the Nets have fully hit the reset button. But I think they're going to be really solid on defense. Now, my third favorite trade. Well, let's talk about the Lakers real quick before we even go to that one. The Lakers trade. So the Lakers received D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. My favorite part of this trade for the Lakers, obviously I'm a LeBron fan, was actually the addition of Jared Vanderbilt. He might be the least heralded player, but I loved him when he was on the Timberwolves. He provided great defense, solid rebounding, and just overall energy. And a lot of time watching the Lakers this year, they just didn't have that energy that they need to compete, especially when they lost to OKC when LeBron passed the record in front of a national audience. I think people that didn't see, and maybe you didn't watch all the games, you got to see what that team like was in effect instead of just reading the headlines. And it was on full display. So I think he's going to provide a lot of energy to this team, rebound, and the defense which was a lot of what they needed, especially with LeBron nursing some injuries, AD not looking fully healthy. They're going to need that energy, especially in the front court. Obviously, Malik Beasley, elite shooter. I think he's top 15 in the league and makes. D'Angelo Russell is as well. And the Lakers need shooting. They swapped out essentially Beasley and D'Angelo Russell for Patrick Beverley and Russell Westbrook. Obviously, a massive upgrade in shooting and overall playmaking and taking care of the ball. So D'Angelo Russell, still surprisingly young. In the second stint with the Lakers, we all know what happened the first time. I think he's a good shot creator and three-point shooter. It can be argued that maybe his efficiency levels could be way higher. Timberwolves were actually better when he was off the floor, and he is playing for a contract. But I do think he's going to provide what the Lakers need as far as shot creation and the pick and roll. He should be really dangerous in the pick and roll with AD and the other Lakers bigs like Wendell Carter. But again, his most important thing that he's going to provide is volume three-point shooting at high efficiency. The Minnesota Timberwolves pick up Mike Conley, Nicole Alexander-Walker, Juan Toscano Anderson, Damian Jones, and 3 first-round picks. That's very important that they got Mike Conley to steady the ship. He should work really well and provide that veteran presence for Anthony Edwards and really teach him how to play the game, give him the fundamentals. But he's arguably more important for development and the chemistry that he already has with Rudy Gobert, making him that lob threat. They already were great in the pick and roll, so we'll see how that plays out. Utah, I don't think Russell Westbrook ever played for them. He's going to receive a buyout, and reportedly there's interest from the Chicago Bulls and the Los Angeles Clippers. We'll see how that plays out with old Russell. The important part about the Utah pickup was that 2017 lightly protected first-round pick. I believe it's top 4, so if the Lakers are, if they're worse than what they are now, but if they're really bad by that time with LeBron possibly retiring and AD dealing with his health situations, and we'll see how the rest of the roster is by that time. But the Lakers put some insurance in case they're really, really terrible and they're aiming for one of those top 4 picks, but we'll see how that plays out. Finally, let's talk about the big trade. The big trade was Kevin Durant to the Phoenix Suns. Now, it wasn't just Kevin Durant going there. It was Kevin Durant and T.J. Warren end up going to the Phoenix Suns. Obviously, we know KD is one of the best players of all time. Really moldable player, fits into any offense. Underrated defensive player. KD has dealt with some injuries over the past couple years as he continues to age. I believe he's going to be 35 next year, currently 34. So he's already up there in age, but he's still one of the best players in the league, top 5 player in the league, one of the most talented players in the league, an all-time great. I just want to give him his flowers. And TJ Warren, you know, he struggled to stay healthy, but we saw what he did in the bubble, and he's returning to that Suns team that he was on, where he was dropping 40, 50 points back to back. So we'll see how he plays. This is a lot of offense going to the Phoenix Suns. They gave up a lot, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I liked the trade. They obviously, this is a win now move. They were already in win now mode, but this is even more. This is essentially pushing all your chips in the table to win. And I honestly think they have a great chance to win the championship. They have to be solid players on the buyout market going forward, but I think a lot of veteran players are going to want to join this core because they see the championship potential. Obviously, if you root for great players to have that championship experience, we want to see Chris Paul get a championship, young Devin Booker continue to ascend, Kevin Durant get another championship, 3 championships, and DeAndre Ayton. We want to see how he messes. We want to see where his head at, especially when he's dropped down another peg in the offensive pecking order, which he seemed to have issues with dating throughout last season, in the playoffs, and this season. We'll see how it plays out. Monte Williams is a great coach, and I think they got a chance to win a championship again. Now, the Brooklyn Nets end up receiving back Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, who ended up getting rerouted to the Milwaukee Bucks for, I think, it's reported anywhere from 3 to 5 first-round picks. And they received 4 first-round picks in 2023, 2025, 2027, 2029, and they had a pick swap for the 2028 first-round pick with the Phoenix Suns. That's a huge draft haul, especially with the draft picks they still picked up from the Kyrie Irving trade. So the Brooklyn Nets are essentially hitting the reset button, and I actually love what they're doing. They're picking up the most valuable players in the NBA as far as what teams want, and that's multi-positional forwards, guys that can play defense and knock down threes. They have those guys in abundance with Dorian Finney-Smith, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson. They had Jay Crowder, but you know it was an overabundance. They already had Royce O'Neal on the roster, and now we get to see. I understand that everybody's not excited about it, but we get to see Ben Simmons run his own team. Again, they're going to be great defensively. They have good shooters. They have a good coaching staff with Jacque Vaughn leading the group. We're going to see like what they do come this summertime, if he's still going to be the coach there, but obviously everybody's up for audition. Mikal Bridges came in number 2 in Defensive Player of the Year last year. He's a great defensive player. I think he has his highest points per game average this year, so he's putting the ball in the hole. Cam Johnson seemed like he was always ready to have more offensive responsibilities. Obviously, he was the reason that Jay Crowder ended up requesting the trade before the season began for the Phoenix Suns, because Cam was going to start, a knockdown three-point shooter, a great defender. So the Nets, they have the most valuable players as far as what the NBA wants in individual players. Then they picked up at least 6 first-round picks in these 2 deals for their superstars. Now, obviously, the James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving big 3 didn't work out in Brooklyn. A lot of dysfunction there. They've always been in the headlines for the wrong reasons. So you can deem that as a failure. But people might disagree with this, but I think Sean Marks is going to do a good job rebuilding this team. I think he already has some solid pieces, and I like the haul they got back. And really, I love teams that pick a direction. I made a video. You guys can go watch my video about why the Lakers should have picked a direction. They should rebuild. They picked a direction. I love teams that pick a direction. When Kyrie chose to leave or requested a trade and they sent him to the Mavericks, they had no chance of winning the championship. They had no chance of beating Boston or Milwaukee or maybe even Philadelphia in a 7-game series with a hobbled KD. But with just KD and The players that they picked up from the Kyrie trade, they had no chance. I think they saw the writing on the wall, and I commend them for making the decision and actually setting up a good plan from my point of view at this time and executing said plan. So, I want to thank you guys for listening. This has been a really solid episode. Again, visit Hattie's Collection. Listen to my other videos and search my page, 3012 Inning Podcast. I really appreciate you guys. I want to thank you guys, and you guys can let me know down in the comment section if you disagree with anything I said about the NBA trades or my analysis about the Super Bowl. Again, I'm going with the Eagles to win this game, 34-24. Thank y'all. God bless.